um, intentional. Hello. Okay, so today I am so excited to be spending some time with Keisha Wright. Keisha Wright is the founder of Emotional Recovery Clinic, which is an awesome clinic that I had the opportunity to attend and really receive just an amazing transformation in my life. And I wanted to take a minute and have a conversation with her about grief, and what do we do with that and how do we address that? What sparked it for me was I'm in contact with some people who have really experienced death around holidays and just before. And it's like, how do you deal with it? How do we address it? How do we talk about it? And he's just going to share with us some tips, and tricks because he's a trauma coach, which she is amazing. And I just want to just really have a conversation and share with others that may be experiencing this and just need some tips and tricks on how to really actually deal with grief of all kinds. So thank you, Keisha.
Well, I
For
am so glad to be here. I am so excited because grief is not something that has a formula, right? And so
yeah,
we don't know how to grieve because you don't get to walk through it until you're walking through it, right? And it can look different. People grieve differently, and different situations brings out different, you know, feelings when it comes towards grief. And so I think the first one to talk about is actually death, like physical death. And we all can understand someone's no longer with us, rather it was unexpectedly, or they had been battling an illness, whatever it is. When you talk about losing someone, first of all, what makes the holidays really hard when you have had a physical death in your life is what makes it more painful. um, is it's the illusion everywhere you turn, whether it's a commercial or just even as you're doing your online shopping or being out and about, that everything is joyful, everything's about family, everything is about this camaraderie, and these people can have lived far away from each other, and they can magically show up at a table and have a turkey and everything's wonderful, right? And that is a false realization and a false expectation. And so, what makes grief hard is just the fact of a person's presence no longer being there. Maybe there's some things that you left unsaid. There was some unfinished hurt and pain, or there was unfinished conversations that you did not have. And so, what are some tips as you're walking through grief? Is acknowledging that you're grieving. Just giving yourself a break for grace to sit and acknowledge. So when I work with people and they have had a death, a physical death, I tell them, initially I say about how long has it been, and so we kind of gauge. But I say, okay, sometimes you need 4 to 5 deliberate pauses where you set your timer, and I try and get them to do it the same time of day, where there's deliberate pause where you can sit and say, she's gone. She's no longer here. I'm giving myself permission to allow my brain to wrap around, she's gone. That is important. And as time goes on and your brain has now absorbed the fact she or he is gone, we can lessen the time, right? And then that time will come on as far as being, give yourself permission to notate what you miss about them. It's okay to go back and reminisce, allowing yourself to go back and reminisce about what you miss. I taught a grief class, walking through grief during the holidays, and I encouraged these people, If it's grandmama's banana pudding and grandmama lived to be 95 years old, she lived a great long life and she just fell asleep and went to be with Jesus. But give yourself permission to say, Aunt Cynthia can't make banana pudding like grandma. Give yourself permission to remember what you loved about them. Okay. And so my last thing, the first one is pausing and allowing yourself time to grieve, right? Just physically saying it out loud, then making a list or notating what you miss about them, right? And then one thing that I've recently been working with a lady, not working with her as far as coaching, but she's on my team, and I made the comment is allowing yourself the permission to introduce their spirit to people around you. And this is my belief. Okay. So some of your listeners may choose to agree, disagree, whatever. I believe the body is temporal. It's not going to live forever. That's why we have death. But I believe that a person's spirit lives on. It's eternal, right? And we do not have to allow the spirit to die. We can choose that. We can choose, okay, well, grandma's dead. We're never going to talk about her again, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That's not, because you don't talk about it doesn't equal that you're healing. That does not equal, just because you're able to talk about it and there's no tears, that doesn't equal healing all the time. But allowing yourself permission to have their spirit present is allowing that person to continue to being a part. We joke and laugh and get around the table and can talk about grandma's banana pudding like it was the first thing to leave, that everybody had to have some. So allowing, laughing and joking and allowing that person's that person's spirit to be a part. Does that make sense?
It does. I know some people want to get like super overly spiritual about it, but it really does help to acknowledge that this person did live. They
Yes.
did live and they did impact your life,
Yes.
so why do we sit here and try to pretend like, they didn't exist and
Right.
stuff down those feelings of, missing them. So I think that's great, to be able to give people permission to allow their spirit to carry on. So thank you
Absolutely.
for that. Thank
Absolutely.
you. One of the things that you also mentioned, we talked about the fact that yes, there's physical grief, but then you also mentioned that there's those non-physical grief,
Yes.
the actual loss of someone. So can you talk about that?
Absolutely. Grief can be undercover. And so physical grief is one that's on the forefront. We can't like kind of deny the pink elephant in the room. But there's also emotional grief. And sometimes people don't realize that they're grieving. Okay. So we can look at divorce. Okay. That is, rather you're happy that he's gone or not, it is still a grief process of what once was and is no longer, right?
Mm.
There is a grief process that you have to allow yourself to go through. Okay. So during the holiday seasons, again, that can be where the jab is, the knife's entered in and it can be turned, because everyone is so happy, everyone has a someone, everybody's happy and all that, those things, and that's not you. Even if it was the right thing to do, that's not where you are right now. And acknowledging that the loneliness sometimes can also, marry with I'm grieving and being able to deal with it as grief. The second part that I think is even more undercover in the grief process is having the death of a dream. Okay. And I teach that in some sessions, the death of a dream is one that's kind of hard to wrap our minds around. But when you expose it, people oftentimes, if they've had that, they're like, oh my gosh, that's absolutely right. It can be the expectations of what we wanted our children to be. It's death of a dream. It is where we think we should be in our marriage or our relationship, or where, okay, at 48 years old, I would have thought we would have been da 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 da, whatever that is. That is death of what you have dreamed about. And when you have that, many times, okay, a twin sister to death of a dream is unmet expectations, right? Because the reason the dream died is because you had an expectation on yourself or someone else. And so that can be a more convoluted than maybe you, as you begin unpacking, you might find yourself, okay, I'm digging deeper and deeper into what is trauma or an injury, that it's helpful to bring it to the light, but knowing how to unpack it and knowing how to heal correctly is essential.
Amazing to me. And it's a good reminder of some of what I experienced in the clinic
Yes.
and things, I need to really pick back up the tools, and apply them. So
Yes.
I love that. And I know that everyone doesn't have a chance to go to the clinic,
Right.
but you got an amazing conference coming up. And I want to share that with people because, this dealing with grief, alone is very difficult. And especially if you don't have the right tools in place, I think it's important to just really have that space where you can learn. And you're doing this amazing conference. You've got like an insane amount of classes and
Yes.
opportunities. So can you talk about that for just a moment?
Absolutely. I am super excited about this conference because you're right. Everybody can't come to a clinic. And the clinic is, rather you have to get on a plane or the cost of the clinic, all those things, even though I think that's my baby and I love it, right? But this conference is casting the net wider. Okay. And then the reason I love this conference is because my team has come in and they have come up with 21 different classes for people to pick and choose. And you get to pick out of 21 classes where your pain points are. Where does it hurt the most? Where do you feel like, if I could just learn that one, I don't need this whole thing, but if I can walk away with that, that's going to be great. And there's one on grief. Okay. It's one on losing someone and losing the death of the dream. That is a class that people can actually take, and how to heal correctly when you have lost, whether it's through death, divorce, or just disappointment, right? And so we're covering the 3 Ds for that one: death, disappointment, or divorce. And so someone can take a class, but here's another one that it's like is tied in to grief. So I want to tell you about this conference. It's not just for people that are married. So it's called, relationship recovery, but it's not for married. So you do not have to have a prerequisite of being married. We have people that are teaching that are divorced. We have people that are teaching that are single. It is anytime you see your relationship of any sort, even relationship with Jesus needs improvement, there is a class for you. But this last class that I'm going to throw out is, parenting, right? Parenting the prodigal. We have a class about that, like what happens when these kids are not doing it the right way, and how do you love, and where do you correct, and what's rebellion versus repentance, and so we are teaching hands-on tools about pain points that people are struggling with, and we want them to pick their top 3 hurts so they can take a class specifically about that particular situation in their life.
Now, here's one that I actually want to bring up. One of the topics is about the loss of innocence, about, sexual abuse.
Yes.
For a time, I was actually grieving the loss of who I could have become,
Mm-hmm.
So that right there to me, I feel like is also something to mention,
Yes.
when it comes to the
Stolen
classes that are
innocence.
offered.
Yes. And you know what's amazing about that class? Um, Stolen innocence is not just for the girls.
Yeah.
It's not what's talked about. And men deal with sexual trauma very differently than women. And so the fact that it's not just for the girls, I'm loving it. And how does stolen innocence sometimes when sexual trauma happens as a child, we can't even land that that's really what took place. We just know there's something not right. And so unpacking that and allowing people to give you tangible tools like this team is going to come in and give you like a recipe tools on how you can begin that healing process for yourself.
That's amazing. So this conference is January 12th and 13th.
Yes. We're kicking off the new year. Okay. You know, my saying that I say, wellness is your birthright. We are kicking off 2024. We are not going to take the past pain of 2023, dragging it into 24. This is a great way to kick off your year. It is in Asheville, North Carolina. The church facility is actually in Hendersonville, which is about 10 miles from Asheville. Here's the thing. We are trying to make this super affordable. Sabrina, it's $150. 2 days, $150. You can take your classes. You're going to walk away with tools. This church has made it so incredibly affordable. And here's the thing. I don't know when your people are going to hear, but between now and Christmas Day, okay, if you type in early bird, you get it for $125. You could buy yourself the gift of wellness. You can learn how to heal correctly. I tell people all the time, you're not responsible for what happens to you, but you recovering from what has happened is your responsibility.
That's really good. That's really good. And this giving yourself this gift is the best gift you can ever give yourself. So I do encourage it. I'm a witness. It was amazing. She's amazing. She's got a lot of great stuff to offer. And that's why really I want to do this and promote this as much as possible, because I want everybody who is connected to me, not connected to me, to experience this. It's absolutely life-changing. So thank you, Keisha, for what you do. Can you please just give your website so that way people know where to find you?
Absolutely. The website is emotionalrecoveryclinic.org. And I'm going to do one more step, because here's the thing. You do not have to walk through the holiday season by yourself. If you choose to do that, that is your choice. That is what you are choosing to do. Because if you are listening to this, right, and grief is overwhelming you during the holidays, right, you can pick up the phone and you can call us. We really will answer. I have team leaders and that are sitting by their phone during the holidays, Christmas Day. If you're struggling, you don't have to do this by yourself. Okay. And so sometimes just picking up the phone and vomiting on a stranger allows you to feel better until you can get to the next step. So I want to give your listeners my phone number. It is 239-333-8601. You can call or text that number, and I am serious. You will talk to a person and we will walk through that with you. Why? Because I made God a promise 13 years ago. If he ever got me out of the living hell I was living in, I'd spend the rest of my life teaching someone else. So it's not an inconvenience. It is your way of helping me keep my covenant with the Father. So please reach out to us. Don't do this by yourself. You don't have to.
Wow. That's phenomenal. Thank you, Keisha, for going above and beyond. Thank you so much. Okay. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks.